Get ready to reunite your passion for early childhood education. I'm your host, Marcia Nicole, and welcome to the Inspiring ECE podcast. Our goal is to build community where you feel inspired and motivated to be the best version of yourself. So join us as we dive into the world of early childhood education together and reunite that fire that brought you into this profession. As an educator, I know how challenging and rewarding the field can be, and that's why I created this podcast. We'll explore the latest trends and challenges faces in the field. We'll have expert guests and webinars and provide workshop, coaching, and mentorship programs that will help guide you to your ideal work-life balance. So join us as we dive into the world of early childhood education together and reunite that fire that brought you to this profession in the first place. So let's get started. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Inspiring ECE podcast. I'm your host, Marcia Nicole, and today we're going to talk about how to stay motivated and empowered as an educator, even during the most challenging times. This episode comes to me from all the messages and the emails that I received from this small but mighty community that we are building here at I Aspire to Educate. I know being an educator can be tough, and there are many stressors in our daily lives that can zap your motivation and making us feel drained and discouraged. But the good news is there are ways to stay motivated and empowered no matter what challenges we face. I'm not going to say it's easy, but what I am going to say is I'm here to share my experience and knowledge with you. I have been an educator for a long time, and I have dealt with some of these things, and all I want to do is share that knowledge with you. So let's dive in and explore some tips that can help you stay motivated and energized on your journey as an educator. Let's get into today's episode. Okay, so before we get into today's episode, I want to be truthful and transparent. I'm not always motivated, and I'm not always empowered. And that's the truth. It's taken me a long time to understand that in those moments, it's okay. It is okay to forgive yourself of that guilt if you do not feel empowered and motivated all the time. Educators, I'm going to say that one more time. It is okay to forgive yourself of that guilt that we carry when we don't feel motivated or on all the time. Let's start with that. I understand there's tons of things going on, and it is hard to be on all the time. Trust me, I get it. I'm going to tell you, give yourself grace. Those children in your program appreciate that you show up for them. Show up for you. Give yourself grace. I say that because that is something I learned only a few years ago. And I didn't have somebody guiding me and helping me along the way to navigate all of this guilt and these emotions that I was feeling as an educator. And I want to share that with you. So what I'm going to say for these next couple tips is just things that I've experienced, and I wish I had somebody to share with me many, many moons ago. So, first things first, set boundaries. I know you've heard it and I tried, and sometimes, no, be intentional with setting those boundaries. If you are going to shut things down at 6 p.m., you're going to shut things down. If you are not going to check emails, you are not going to check emails. If you do not get to planning that craft activity for tomorrow, that's okay. Respect your boundaries because you cannot pour from an empty cup. Again, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So make sure you are setting those boundaries. And with setting those boundaries, they're going to look different for everybody. So maybe it's not bringing work home. Maybe it's not talking to colleagues about work after work. Maybe it's doing research about work and activities only during those contracted hours. So set your boundaries professionally so you can still have a life personally. And my second tip is find your joy. I know you've heard me say that before, but I believe it. I think I'm going to put it on a t-shirt somewhere. Find your joy. Surround yourself with what makes you feel the best version of you. That could be listening to uplifting music, reading inspirational quotes, or having a conversation with somebody that fills your cup. And I love that I have an amazing squad and mentors and coaches that I reach out to every time I'm in that mood where I'm just like, I don't know. They always fill my cup. And I love having conversations with them. I even schedule conversations with them just so I have something to look forward to in my week. And that's just how I find my joy. But what I want you to do is find your joy. And maybe it's sitting on the floor, singing your favorite song with a bunch of toddlers. Or maybe you yourself like to play in the sandbox. I love to play in the sandbox. I remember when I had colleagues that said, please don't bring the sand in the classroom. It wasn't the children. It was always me bringing the sand into the classroom. But I was okay with that because it brought me joy. And I like to do things that bring me joy. So my tip for you is whatever brings you joy, make time for that every single day. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That is a part of empowerment. That motivates you when you carve out that time for yourself to find your joy. My next tip for you is embrace new ideas and strategies. Try something new. Don't be afraid of doing new things in your classroom. I know that's hard and not everybody can do that, but try. Maybe we're doing shaving cream in the sensory bin with sand and see what that feels like. Maybe we're just going outside at a different time of day to see how the children react. Just try small things to kind of re-spark that fire. We can always do that with a new activity, a new song, a new story. It can be really small. It can be really big thing. Like, having a whole different classroom to play in. Maybe you and the classroom beside you decide to switch classrooms for the afternoon. It could be something like that. So don't be afraid to embrace change, because sometimes you just need that spark. A change of environment, a change of activity. Those things also motivate us. Another tip I would like to share is find your people. You're saying, Marcia, pardon me, find your people. That could be people you work with. That could be anybody within the professional realm, spaces, professional development, blogs, social media. Find your people. Find people that bring you joy, that motivate you, that are doing things in the industry that make you smile, that make you question things, that spark that inquiry of how are they doing that in their classroom? How did they get toddlers to do this? Spark those questions. So find your people. Surround yourself, reach out, ask questions. That that I love, that how many of you reach out and ask me all types of questions, which I absolutely love. Keep doing that. That is empowerment. That's how you grow as an educator. We keep learning, we keep discovering. If we are happy with discovering and learning new things, just imagine when we bring that into the classroom for our children and our students in our programs. And lastly, when you are faced with a challenge, it can be overwhelming. That is why I will always tell you to pause, take a breath, take a break, and break it down into small steps. Don't focus on a larger task. Focus on taking it one step at a time. When you take things one step at a time, they look more manageable. This is how we stay motivated and we stay focused, but most of all, we get through those challenges. So, I want you to embrace that some days you're going to be motivated and empowered to continue this amazing work that you do. And there's other days where you are not. And those days is okay. But when we put our boundaries in place, the world is endless. We can take on anything in small doses. And for my listeners that had the question, how do I stay motivated? And I said it in the beginning, I don't always, but I will tell you what's worked for me. On those days that I'm absolutely non-motivated, not feeling the greatest, I give myself forgiveness. I allow myself to be in those emotions, in that time and space. I've also given myself a specific amount of time. I'm only allowed to feel like that for one day. That's it. But while I'm in that day, how do I know that I'm going to get out of this in the next day? So I take that time to myself and I reflect. I do my voice journal because sometimes pen and paper is not my friend. Sometimes I take long walks. Sometimes I listen to other podcasts that motivate me, that get me out of my funk. And I'm really hoping that this podcast is it for you. But I allow myself to be in that moment, knowing that I've given myself some time to be in those emotions, to deal with those emotions, because tomorrow is a new day. The reason that I started this podcast was when I was going through my journey as an educator, there was no one around to help motivate or guide me and my wellness. Let's talk about this. My wellness as an educator through my journey. When I started talking to educators and I started interviewing them and people kept asking me, it always came out to be the same. Nobody supports our wellness. Nobody thinks that what we do is important. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm here. And those children appreciate that you show up every day. So, Marcia Nicole is definitely an advocate for educator wellness. Because without you being whole, those children don't have access to awesome educators. And that is important. So, before I go on a rant all about educator wellness, I want to recap today's episode. I want you to stay motivated and inspired as an educator the best way you possibly can. And the way we could do that is by setting boundaries, finding our joy, finding our people, celebrating our wins, no matter how big or small, and when we are faced with a challenge, break it down into small steps and focus on taking one step at a time. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Inspiring ECE podcast. I hope you found these tips helpful in staying motivated and inspired as an educator. And if you enjoyed this episode and others, please consider sharing it with your colleagues and friends, subscribing so you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Ispire2Educate for more resources and freebies to support you on your education journey. You can find the link to our latest freebie in that bio. Again, I want to thank you all for listening. Until the next episode, keep inspiring. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Inspiring ECE podcast. thank you for joining us. We had a blast, and we hope you did too. And don't forget, we're here to support you through your educational journey. So subscribe and tune in for future episodes. And let's continue to inspire and support each other to the best versions of ourselves. Until next time, have yourself a great day.